The Fall of Hearts is the 10th studio album by Katatonia. It was released on the 20th of May of 2016 through Peaceful Records. Now that said, maybe you've never heard of the band before. Well, Katatonia is a band hailing from Sweden. They've been around since the 90s and have undergone many changes of styles throughout their career. From melodic doom metal to all the way to more atmospheric and depressive alternative rock / metal, occasionally experimenting with progressive music in more recent years. As for The Fall of Hearts, yet again the band kind of steps into another direction a little bit, but more on that later, because I will start off this review by looking at this album independently of the others. Because as a newcomer you might be wondering, why should I listen to this album? What should I expect from it? What does it sound like? Well, what you get is the sound of musicians who are masters at creating an atmosphere. A thick, dark, depressing, yet beautiful atmosphere in which very powerful emotions are conveyed. Such an atmosphere is achieved through stellar musicianship and songwriting. The songs are versatile in styles and daring in their structures and in the overall ideas behind them. And although these ideas do not reinvent anything, they are executed extremely well and they're clever and interesting enough to keep you invested throughout the whole journey. You will hear dark and heavy, headbang-worthy moments as well as more sinister, evil-sounding, more somber, softer moments, as well as some moments that are so full of emotion that it could bring a tear to your eye, or at least hypnotize you between blistering solos and soft acoustic guitars. You will also hear tons of nods to progressive metal. If you're a fan of Opeth, for example, you will be pleased. If you're a fan of metal, or heck, just music in general, you should still do yourself a favor and at least listen to this album. Because if its harsher doom metal moments don't get you, you will definitely stay for the sheer beauty of the melodies and the harmonies, the emotions communicated through the morose vocals, and you will let this darkness consume you. Because that's what Katatonia always did. That's what they do best. They mix sadness, depression, and beauty with metal. The changes of pace are handled extremely well, they sound great, and they often mix elements of the two during choruses, creating truly powerful moments. And this album is no exception. This stays the same, but there are a couple of things that change with The Fall of Hearts. First of all, we have two new members in the lineup. We have Daniel Moilanen on the drums and Roger Ojerson on the guitars. I'm sorry if I butchered those names. We'll just call them Daniel on the drums and Roger on the lead guitars. For the new drummer, I don't really have something so interesting to say, because Katatonia has never been about really showing off their drummer or anything like that. They're not a Dream Theater, you know? But it does the job extremely well. In fact, it's one of the things that I always liked about Katatonia, is the way they mix drums with bass. It creates like this pounding heartbeat, this groove, this head massage. If you wear headphones and listening to Katatonia, you will definitely get that head massage that the drum and bass provide. That's a really good point. Although it's a new drummer, we'll probably see more of him personally and what he can add new to the band in future albums if he stays. Roger, though, did a splendid job on the lead guitars. He really had the occasion to show off his soloing skill. The band has said it themselves. He came in just at the right time to deliver some pretty crazy solos. Tracks like Passer really show that. It starts with this epic solo, probably the best that I've heard in their whole discography, and that's saying a lot because they have beautiful moments with solos, but really they have outdone themselves, and I guess that Roger Ojerson has a lot to do with this. But the guitar work in general is a bit different this time around. You will notice that it's a bit more melodic than before. It's a bit more, the songs sometimes are more guitar oriented and riff heavy, actual riffs that get caught in your head. It's not really something that Katatonia is used to do, but it's really there in this album. Some riffs sound like Opeth. There are solos, there are harmonies in the guitar, some things that could remind you of their earliest Doom days, or albums like Tonight's Decision, for example. Tracks like Serene. If you listen to Serene, which is one of the singles they released prior to the release of the album, you will hear that, you know, there is constantly one guitar doing some melodies with rhythmic guitars on the background, really reminded me of Tonight's Decision, for example. So basically the guitars are a bit more versatile and ambitious this time around. And this ambition and versatility is also present in the overall songwriting. They took more liberties with the way they wrote the songs. It felt like they weren't compromised by traditional song structuring, like verse, chorus, solo, chorus, end, if you catch my meaning. But it feels like they want to have as much fun as they wanted with their music, and without being, you know, restrained by traditional songwriting. This is also where their prog influence comes into play, because it is way more aggressive, way more noticeable at this time in this album, way more so than ever before, to my greatest contempt. If you listen to Pale Communion by Opeth, you will definitely recognize almost some of the riffs that are present throughout this album. Tracks like Take Over and Serac really are prog heavy, you know? They sound very Opeth-y to me, and I like that. I really like the direction they went in with this album in general. If I could conclude real quick, I would say that this is probably the biggest change in their sound since Viva Emptiness in 2003, and that's a pretty big statement. Katatonia likes to change up their sound once in a while, and they haven't done so for more than 10 years, so I'm pretty glad to see this finally happen. As much as I enjoyed Dead and Kings, it was really an amazing album too, but this one surpasses it easily because of their experimentation, their lack of restraint. Their songwriting in general was a bit more creative with The Fall of Hearts. It was more compelling to me as a progressive metal and rock fan, and I'm very glad that they experimented more with prog. A wet dream of mine would be hearing a big concept album with this character that they would portray, you know, going through multiple stages of depression, you know, the sadness, the anger, emotions that Katatonia has always conveyed very well with their music. So they would be capable of doing something like that. Even more progressive influences, even more experimentations with the song structures, and this album truly shows that they can do these things. So they could have done even more, according to me. As enjoyable as this album was, I take it for what it is, and what it is an excellent compilation of tracks, heavy moments, headbang-worthy moments. It's dark, it's evil, it's sinister at times, and moments that are packed full of emotions. Sometimes, you know, the strings, the piano, the synthesizer mixed with the layers of guitars and the harmonies of the vocals really make for powerful emotional moments. Basically, this album has everything I like about Katatonia. It has emotion and heaviness, darkness and doom, and they added this more progressive, heavy influence, and they have brought this more guitar-driven moments, and, you know, these little steps towards a more experimental direction that I really like. So overall, it was an amazing experience. I highly recommend this album, and I would rate it 85%. Right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and as a quick end note, I would like to say that I will release very soon an acoustic cover of their first single that was released on this album, Old Heart Falls. If you're watching this and the cover has already been released, I will just put a link right here so you can go and watch it there.